before we begin, I just want to shout out my friend Logan for doing the pixel art for all the items that I created. Anyways, let's get into it. Seems like as time has gone on, Game Freak is getting really good at two things: absolutely breaking game balance by introducing more and more overpowered Pokemon, and turning abilities into items. I mean, there's probably more, but I needed a solid intro to the video. I gave myself a solid 7 out of 10 there. Point is, in recent generations, Game Freak has been able to create items which emulate effects previously exclusive to a Pokemon's abilities. Some recent examples include the Clear Amulet, which effectively is just Clear Body, the item, and the Covert Cloak, which is just an equipable Shield Dust. Also, have you ever heard of the ability Shield Dust? Probably not, because the only Pokemon that get it are the ones painting your car's windshield, but it's a pretty great ability which blocks all secondary effects of moves. So this got me thinking, what other abilities could be turned into items? I mean, you all seem to love my theory crafting videos on balancing Pokemon. Gen 4 is coming soon, so I thought this would be a fun little exercise. If you enjoyed this video at any point in time, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. As a matter of fact, you should really just subscribe right now because of a playlist full of content just like this that you can watch once this video ends. And if you think you're subscribed, do me a favor and double check because a lot of my viewers actually aren't. With that, let's get into the video. Also, my voice is a little different. I did 2 nights of karaoke in a row. I'm a little hoarse right now. Okay, so before we can really get into the items that I created, I think it's important to lay a few ground rules for what I went with here. Items in Pokemon broadly can't do as much as abilities. For example, creating an item which has weather setting effects of snow warning, drizzle, drought, or sandstream would be frankly ridiculous. I couldn't see Game Freak implementing anything that powerful into the game as an item, as it would completely flip the game on its head just by existing. So I limited the items to having effects which are just affecting the user and the Pokemon which directly interact with the user. Just because when I theory craft, I like to keep things pretty realistic for game balance purposes. So let's begin with the medkit. The medkit functions as the item counterpart to the ability Hospitality. Hospitality is the signature ability of Sinistcha. Whenever Sinistcha switches into battle, its partner Pokemon is healed for 25% of its health. An ability which has been proven to be powerful next to the likes of Iron Hands, Archaludon, and plenty of other bulky offensive Pokemon. Keeping your Pokemon healthy enough to tank just one extra hit can be enough to turn the tide of a battle, and being able to switch in to heal a Pokemon means that the healing will go before even the highest of priority moves like Extreme Speed and Fake Out. Obviously, having unlimited uses like Sinistcha's ability would be far too strong of an item. So this item functions only once per battle, and only if the partner Pokemon is below 100% HP at the moment the holder switches into battle. On top of that, I decided to switch it from 25% to 33% since it's a one-time use. Some Pokemon I could see functioning well with this item are Pokemon which have solid bulk on their own and good support moves like Rage Powder and Fake Out. I'd argue that one of the most powerful users of this item would have to be Amoonguss. As a Pokemon which already has the potential to heal its partners with Pollen Puff and has the ability Regenerator, Amoonguss would be able to switch into battle to instantly heal its partner for 33% of its health once and threaten to sleep Pokemon or redirect moves into itself to keep the partner even more safe. And while Amoonguss might miss the longevity provided to it by holding a Citrus Berry, it would still be able to switch in and out of battle to recover health with its ability Regenerator. Another possible user would be Gothitelle, who could not only switch in to heal the partner and threaten Fake Out, but combining this with the ability Shadow Tag could mean that one of the opposing Pokemon is ultimately pinned for a knockout on the following turn. As powerful of an item as this may be, it comes with a massive cost to run it. There would be some games where you get the full 33% healing to the partner and end up in a winning position, and there would be some games where you end up ultimately just healing a little bit of sand chip damage, making the item useless, and thus making you wish you equipped an item which actually did something every game. It would certainly be an item which rewards players that are the best at keeping good board position. Speaking of good board positioning, you know what really makes that hard to achieve? Urshifu. These dudes break every single rule in the game. Not only do they hit through Protect, but they always crit the target with their signature moves Surging Strikes and Wicked Blow. On occasion, smart players have employed Shell Armor Pokemon as a way to wall both of these Pokemon, since their signature moves actually don't deal tremendous damage if they don't get that guaranteed crit. Shell Armor isn't considered a great ability as outside of very specific moves, it's a purely preventative measure by stopping that minor critical hit chance. But surely turning it into an item in an environment plagued with the crit bears is enough to make the effect useful. So let's introduce the Lucky Shield. All this does is prevent critical hits on the user, opening the doors to more Pokemon, effectively becoming walls for some of the most busted Pokemon in the game. You might believe that this would cause those Iron Defense Body Press Pokemon to become far too strong, as you wouldn't be able to crit them anymore, but you need to realize that running an item to prevent critical hits means that these Pokemon would miss out on any recovery from leftovers or citrus berries, relying on a partner Pokemon to keep them healthy, or dedicated recovery moves that they run on their own moveset. Some solid candidates for this item would be Pokemon which already resist Urshifu's close combat, but are susceptible to taking neutral or super effective damage from their signature moves. Top of my list has to be Landorus Therian. Not only can it switch in on close combat, but after an Intimidate, Surging Strikes without any critical hits like a wet noodle. Moltres would also get tons of value out of this, as it could possibly burn the opponent with Flame Body, reducing the damage it takes even further. Point is, a lot of what breaks Urshifu is its guaranteed critical hits, so why has it been 2 full generations and we still can't have an item to block them? I mean, we even used to have a move called Lucky Chant, but in Generation 8 with the culling of lesser used moves, we ended up having a solid answer to Urshifu just get removed before the Pokemon was even created. Speaking of Generation 8, this was the gen that introduced us to 2 new abilities which were direct counterplay to Redirection in all of its forms. Propeller Tail Barraskewda and Stalwart Duraludon were able to ignore the effects of Follow Me, Rage Powder, and even Ally Switch. These abilities allowed for them to fit a niche which no Pokemon was previously able to, in always being able to attack the intended target. Which got me wondering, why isn't there an item that does this? Sure, the safety goggles will block the effects of Rage Powder, but their main purpose is blocking powder moves like Sleep Powder and Spore. So, let's introduce the Horse Blinders. This held item simply allows for the user to ignore all redirection like the previously mentioned abilities. Virtually any Pokemon could get some mileage out of this item, as it's just that powerful of a utility item, but some applications could be for allowing Urshifu or Chien-Pao to ignore opposing Clefairy in exchange for them being able to hold a Focus Sash. The final item on this list, based off of an ability, is what I'm going to be calling the Phantom Cloak. This item would allow for the user to bypass screens like Reflect and Aurora Veil, as well as substitutes, as though it had the ability Infiltrator. While currently in VGC, we aren't exactly in a screens meta, there have been moments in history where Pokemon like Grimmsnarl dominated tournaments by allowing their partner Pokemon to eat hits far better behind a Reflect and Light screen. Beyond its purpose as an anti-meta item, I feel that this would allow for greater prep in formats like Draft League, where you know your opponent's available Pokemon before you even team build. Some solid users of this would definitely be the hyper-offensive Pokemon like Chi-Yu, Fluttermane, and Garchomp, as this would make it easier for them to get consistent damage off against other teams at the expense of damage-boosting items like Life Orbs or Choice items. Also, I'm just throwing this out there, but the Covert Cloak would have been the perfect name for this item, and they ended up just using that name on an effect which doesn't seem to be covert at all. I mean, Infiltration is literally just a covert ability. I know this is a video about turning abilities into items and whatnot, but you know what's also strangely useful for some reason? Just turning off your own ability. Yes, Regigigas Weezing combos in VGC 2021 prove that when we get down to it, an unrestricted 160 base attack might just be a little too high, even if it comes at the cost of having to be ran next to a Weezing that turns off every ability on the field, including your own teammates. One reason for this is that slapping an item like a Life Orb on Regigigas and slacking makes them hit like a Silverback Gorilla who was given access to a home gym. So why not introduce an alternative to this strategy in the ability Suppressor? This item simply turns off the holder's ability, meaning that they effectively have no ability and no item. While on face value it seems like an item which is made specifically for slacking Regigigas to have power at some expense, it's technically also useful as an item to trick onto opposing Pokemon. And hey, while we're at it, make it activate if it's flung onto a Pokemon as well. I mean, why not? Also, I'm just not realizing that this technically lets you Helping Hand Golden Go. Not really useful when you can just give it a choice specs and keep his busted ability, but a use case is a use case. For the next item, I'd like to introduce a new member to the Policy family of items, the third item to go with the Weakness Policy and the Blunder Policy. You see, the Weakness Policy boosts the holder's attack and special attack stat by 2 stages if they're hit by a super effective move, and the Blunder Policy raises the user's speed stat if they happen to miss an attack. What we see here is that the policy items raise a stat in exchange for an unfortunate thing happening to the holder. So what I'd like to propose is what I'm calling the Dire Policy. This item would only have an application in double battles, but it would cause the user to gain +2 defense and +2 special defense if a partner Pokemon faints while the holder's on the field. While it might not seem like a terribly useful item at first, it opens the door to 2v1 comebacks that would otherwise seem impossible. Take for example combining a Final Gambit Pokemon with Dire Policy Garganacl. While Garganacl may not have passive recovery from leftovers, it does get double defenses, making it far more likely to be able to win out an endgame by stalling with Recover and Salt Cure against multiple opponents. Or it could even be a solid Pokemon on offensive Pokemon with good bulk like Maxcalibur. Point is, I just want a third policy, 2 feels like too little to me. Speaking of 3, my final proposal for new items is a family of 3 items. Back in Generation 5, Pokemon could hold these things called gems. These gems varied based on move types, and they would be consumed while giving the user a 50% boost on the first use of a move of the corresponding type of the gem. Meaning certain Pokemon had very solid burst damage options, letting them score surprise KOs where they would otherwise not be able to. My favorite example of this is Flying Gem Tornadus, who would consume its gem, giving it the boost in power to acrobatics, while also allowing it immediate access to acrobatics' full 110 base power, since it technically wasn't holding an item anymore. In my opinion, the biggest issue with these was how easy Pokemon have access to the burst damage. So I'd like to introduce counterparts to the gems which activate based on certain field conditions that the Pokemon might be in, which aren't entirely in the user's control as to not make them so accessible. The Inverted Talisman grants a one-time 50% boost in power to the first move the holder uses while Trick Room is active. The Wind Talisman grants a one-time 50% boost in power to the first move the holder uses when Tailwind is active, and the Blight Talisman grants a one-time 50% boost in power to the first move the holder uses while it's statused, but only if that move is successful. So let's say if the holder is paralyzed but gets fully paralyzed and the move fails, in this case the talisman isn't used up, and will only get used up on a successful attack. In the case of Freeze and Sleep, the talisman will activate on the turn the holder thaws, wakes up, or uses Sleep Talk. These talismans would be solid item options for hard Trick Room Pokemon, Tailwind and Burden Pokemon, and in the case of the Blight Talisman, Draft League prep. I think that having the activation condition be slightly further out of reach than just using the correct type could go a long way for game balance. You might think that the Blight Talisman could be far too strong on Guts Pokemon like Ursaluna, but you need to keep in mind that they wouldn't be able to hold the Flame Orb, so getting burned is mostly out of their control now. And yes, Komala can use the Blight Talisman whenever it feels like it. It's just, it's considered sleeping, so its first attack, you always get the Blight Talisman. It's like a super normal gem. I don't know, I think it'd be really cool. You gotta give little buffs to Komala. We love Komala. Before we end off, I also wanted to let you in on some item ideas I rejected because I just didn't see them being balanced and I couldn't see them getting implemented into the game. First off, an item which extends Trick Room and Tailwind. I'll be honest, I'm still not too into the Light Clay extending screens to effectively last the entirety of a VGC match, so making the speed control options last close to that already feels like a big stinking pile of wrong. Second, I don't think hard Trick Room size spam players deserve anything. Despite that, I also rejected an item which removes all terrain and weather from the field once, as this feels like far too punishing of an item which can be slapped onto any Pokemon that Incineroar wants to pivot into, stopping rain and sun sweeps before they can happen and opening them up to losing their only weather setter with literally no reward. Just have better board positioning against the opposing weather. No get out of jail free cards here. Finally, I also think it'd be pretty dumb to implement items which activate weather, as that's just an absurd level of power to be able to attach to a Caterpie, and I like my Pelipper's employed, whether they be delivering the mail or setting up rain for a partner Pokemon. I'll take either one. Also, I don't want to imagine Tornadus being able to set Sun and Tailwind in a single turn for Typhlosion. That'd just be stupid. But those are just some ideas I had kicking around in my head for the past few gens about items I'd like to see added to the games. What do you think about them? Did I cook too hard or are they balanced? Also, shout out to James Evans for once again helping me workshop these while I was working on the video. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It'd mean the world to me. And if you want to support me further, you can check out my Patreon page or become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button below the video. This gets you sneak peeks at future videos as well as some bonus content. You'll also see your name at the end of all my videos like these lovely people. Special thanks to my most boosted supporters, Ant Media UK, Avatar67, and Kayla Thompson for their generous pledges. Another way to support me is to check out all the videos on the playlist on screen right now. I know you'll find something in there that you'll enjoy. I also have a second channel where I talk about the current VGC metagame trends, and a Twitch channel where I stream, both of which are in the description down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.